Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics video on the channel. It is Thursday and as always we go through our top 10 captains ahead of round 18. So yeah, bit of an interesting week last week. Obviously with Bailey Smith being named out, so had to make adjustments from that. So ended up putting Holmes at number 1. So just substituting him from, I think he was 5th up to 1. And then we popped Nasir in there, obviously, because we couldn't do anything else. But we would have had Bomp there, so we had, obviously, a decent option at number 5 anyway. But, yeah, a few interesting factors there. So, still currently 9th overall in Captain's Challenge for anyone that's sort of interested to see whereabouts I'm at there. Vams is now moved up to top, so I believe Mitch missed the number 1. So, I'm not sure if there's an adjustment coming for Mitch there. But we are now the number 1 expert for the season. So, yes, we'll see how we keep going throughout the remainder of the season. But let's go through our top captains ahead of round 18. Actually, who did I have the other ones last week? I think it was, Caldwell was up there, Cherry, then had, Marshall and Bont rounding out the top 5. So, not too bad in the end. But let's go through our top 10 for round 18. And we'll kick it off with a few really good options. I do like the top 5 this week. And coming in at number 1 is Nick Dayos up against Gold Coast on Friday night. So coming up, obviously great matchup here for Nick Dayos against Gold Coast, who are one of the best teams for inside mids for the season. Just really midfields in general. Nick Dayos' last 3 scores against Gold Coast, 115, 150 and 117. And to put that along with his, obviously, Gold Coast been a good matchup. And then the fact that Nick Dayos is just in very, very good form. So if you look at his last 5 games, 4 of those have been, 6 games, 4 of those have been over 125. Lowest score of 128 of those sort of big tons. Had the 83 against Melbourne with the Langdon tag and the 102 against St Kilda with the Windy tag. But yeah, 129 against North Melbourne, 128 against Hawthorn, 137 against West Coast, 132 against Carlton. Just in very, very good form. And at the moment, he does sit at number 1 ahead of a couple of really good options as well. For anyone that's sort of curious as to what Gold Coast are giving up to midfielders across their last 5 matches, Gold Coast are giving up plus 7.2 points for inside mids. They're minus 9.7 actually for outside mids, which is quite interesting. But we know their midfielders are generally inside. The outside more referring to like those winger type players. But yeah, they've been obviously very good for midfielders. So I look at the inside mid matchup more than anything for a guy like Nick Dayos, and they've been green for the entire season. I believe for the entire season, they're number 2 easiest midfield matchup behind Richmond. But I believe that the last 10 weeks, they've been the second easiest matchup behind North Melbourne, funny enough. So, just a very, very good matchup for Nick Dayos here, and I do like him, and that is why he is sitting at number 1, closely followed by a pair of Essendon players in Zach Merritt and Nick Martin. So I'm going to sort of bunch these guys together. So got Merritt at 2, Nick Martin at 3. Zach Merritt's history against Richmond is obviously amazing, right? 149 against them earlier this year, but then before that, 109, 158, 125, 105, just getting it done. I didn't mention as well, Nick Dayos' career average against Gold Coast is 110.2 in his 4 games, and he's played 3 games up at People First Stadium for an average of 127, so that's another reason why he does sit at the number 1 spot. But Zach Merritt, career average against Richmond is 114.4 from 16 games. So obviously just an amazing record against one team. You wouldn't have a better record against many other teams, I would imagine. So very, very good record against them. And again, returned to form last week with the 145. Back in the midfield, obviously with a few injuries at Essendon now. He's going to play that midfield role, and he's going to get it done. So he's at number 2, and I've got Nick Martin at number 3. So Nick Martin scored a 166 against Richmond earlier this year, so obviously more than Zach Merritt. Then a 102, 104 against Richmond before that. I think the reason I got Zach Merritt ahead of Nick Martin this week is just probably for, I know what Zach Merritt's role is going to be. Whereas Nick Martin, I'm not actually sure what his role's going to be. So it's quite hard to sort of look at the DVP and go, where's the matchup, right? So obviously, I think regardless of matchup for Nick Martin, it's going to be good, right? Outside players are really going to town against Richmond at the moment. Even if it's a high half forward, midfielder, or a rebounding half back, Nick Martin will get it done regardless, right? So I think I've just got Merritt just ahead just for the that midfield role. And if Merritt's playing that inside mid role, we know how good of a player he is, and he can rack up and sort of fill up the stat lines. And I believe Nick Martin can do the same. I do think that this time Merritt will be the one that scores slightly more than Nick Martin. So that is why I've got them 2 and 3. But they've got to be in the top 3 this week with the matchup, I believe. Coming at number 4, I do have Brady Grundy coming up against the Saints. So scored 95 against Ryan Marshall last year, but obviously Brady Grundy at the moment is he's back to the ruck pig. He's completely different to what he was last year. So his form since round 9 has been incredible. Hasn't gone below 110. Scores 115, 111, 134, 124, 139, 121, 137, 113. Just incredible. Massive scores. And again, we've said this a few times, but they haven't all come against easy opponents. So Carlton are tougher against. He went at 111. Melbourne, obviously, Max Gorn went at 134. Riley O'Brien, 124. And then Freo, the dual ruck set up at 113. So, he's getting it done regardless of opponent. But I think the big factor here is that Ryan Marshall, over the last 5 weeks, is I believe, the number 1 matchup for rucks, which is pretty interesting when you've got teams like Essendon, Geelong, Giants, West Coast, Richmond, that all give up points, but he's actually giving up the most over the last 5 weeks, plus 24.5 for rucks there. And if you go the last 10 weeks, it's plus 10. So it's still a very good matchup over the last 10 weeks, but particularly the last 5, Marshall giving up a heap of points. And if you sort of combine that with the fact the form that Grundy's in and the scores he's giving up, he's obviously, I think he's in for another big week here. There's obviously, most other weeks he'd be probably top 2, but just with the matchups that Dayos, Merritt and Martin have got, he comes in at number 4. But Brady Grundy, I think he's on track for another good week coming up against Rowan Marshall. Coming at number 5, Connor Rosie against West Coast. Very good matchup here for Connor Rosie. Last 3 against West Coast, 111, 133, 119. And again, he's just been getting it done just week after week, average of 108 for the year. But since the mid-season bye in round 12, he's had 1 score below 100 in the 5 games, that being a 79 against Sydney. But the other games, 121, 117, 120, 111, so going over 110 every other game. And yeah, he's only gone below the 100 twice since round 4. And he's just been consistent. Only 4 times in the entire year he's gone below 100. So I think he's a good captain option playing on the Sunday. Obviously, Dayos Friday night, Merritt Martin on the Saturday night, Grundy's on the middle game on the Sunday. So you probably can't go Grundy into Rosie. But if you've got a red dot later in the round, you can probably go VC on any of these guys and roll into a Connor Rosie if you'd like to do that, because Rosie's getting it done. Regardless, West Coast for defenders, obviously they're a lot more trickier at Optus Stadium, but they are still a green matchup for defenders, giving up some decent points for defenders there. And if Rosie was to play midfield, they're a good matchup, obviously, as we know, for midfielders as well. So I think regardless of role, Rosie will get it done, but I expect him to play at halfback, which he's been doing for pretty much the majority of the season. So Rosie, very, very good option. So that's my top 5. Let's go through 6 through 10. So I got Zack Butters at number 6. So 107, 88 in his last 2 against West Coast, but I'm not reading a real great deal into it. West Coast, obviously, as I just said, is a very good matchup for midfielders there. I believe, what are they? They're behind North Melbourne and Gold Coast over the last 5 weeks for inside mid matchups, which is obviously very good. So I expect him to, Essendon. So the 4th best inside mid matchup. And I expect Zack Butters to get to work there. Brady Hoff could run with him for a little bit, but still think Zack Butters is going to get it done regardless. Coming in at number 7, I do have someone that's probably going to be lower down this because of the matchup, but I've got Noah Anderson at number 7 this week. So I'm looking at the matchup here, and Collingwood are not a great matchup for midfielders, right? But they don't tag. It is at People First Stadium, and we know that Noah Anderson loves to score up there, and Noah Anderson's recent record against Collingwood is very good. 140, 123, 116, 113 in his last 4 games against them. I think he's just going to get it done. I know that the matchup probably says it's not the pick this week, but if you've got Noah Anderson, it's probably not. You're not likely going there this week, but I think he's got to be in the top 10 because he's getting it done, right? So since round 10, he's only had 2 scores below a ton. Actually, 2 scores below 115. 116, I should say. So he's gone 116, 118, 116, 60 against Geelong when he got them. Was Mullen or O'Connor went to him that game, and he got, obviously, that big hit from Stewart. 133, 93 against Melbourne. when he caught a bit of a tag from Langdon and Viney for the majority of the game, but end up having a good last quarter. And then obviously had that 100-point second half last week. So he's got the ceiling and he can get it done. So if you want to be real unique, you could go there. And I think he's got him in the top 10 just with form and recent history against Collingwood. Obviously, the matchup says it's probably not the best, but he's still in the top 10. Coming in number 8, I do have Bailey Smith. So is he here? Yeah, there he is. So I've got Bailey Smith. Obviously missed last week, obviously with illness, but scored 149 against Giants early in the year. But obviously just the comments from Adam Kingsley earlier today, sort of saying that they're probably going to have plans in place for Bailey Smith, and that could include Toby, meaning obviously Toby Bedford. So he's just down the list just because of the matchup, the potential tag, but wouldn't shock me if he went big. He's obviously the highest scoring player of the season in terms of average, not total points, because obviously missed a few games. But yeah, I still got to be in the top 10 just with his form and how good he's been this year. But yeah, down the list just with the matchup. Coming in at number 9, I've actually got Hugh Mluggage makes the list top 10 this week against Carlton. So Carlton over the last 5 weeks have been giving up more points for midfielders. They're in the green now. And in the last 5 weeks, the only teams giving up more is Essendon, Gold Coast, North Melbourne, and West Coast. So they're pretty much giving up the same. They're giving up slightly more than Richmond. So a good matchup there. I think if anyone's going to be tagged, it's probably going to be Lachie Neale, as always. So I think McCluggage's going to get to work. He obviously can fill up all the stat lines. He's been super consistent throughout the year. So if you do have Hugh McCluggage this week, you could take a bit of a punt on him as a VC. Last 4 haven't been great. 98, 91, 103, 108. Been against the Crows, Giants, Geelong and Port. So not a great run. But then went the 152 against Essendon. So just showing when he gets a good matchup, he can take advantage of it. That day he had, 41 disposals, 11 marks, 4 tackles. And we know that he can rack up the tackles, right? So Carlton are a high stoppage team. They can rack up the tackles around the ball and he can get some transitional ball. I think Hugh Mluggage can really get to work. So he makes the list in the top 10. 118 against Carlton last year and then a 68 as well. So the 118 was in the final and then the 68 obviously not great. But I think McCluggage is taking this game to a new level this year and I think he will score well. And rounding out the top 10 this week, I do have Jordan Dawson, which people could say I'm biased here. Went 126 against the Dogs last year. Not a great matchup coming up here and hasn't been great since going the 138, 139 in rounds 10 and 11. But yeah, 86 against Sydney, 109 against Brisbane, 97 against Hawthorn, 105 against Richmond, and then 94 against Melbourne. But I feel like you can probably look into a reason why these scores have been a bit lower. So, Sydney, they won by 90 points. No one from the Crows scored well, and I think he rested the last 10 minutes on the bench, right? Brisbane, 109. Tagged by Dunkley for the whole game. Went berserk in last quarter, as we know. Hawthorn, 97. He was like the third high-scoring player of the game. Obviously, that real dewy Friday night game. And the other thing was Brisbane, that game was really wet as well. Richmond, 105. That was a 120, but rested the last 5-6 minutes on the bench. And then the 94 against Melbourne was probably the one that was a bit lower. Got a bit of attention from Oliver, but just didn't really get it done after quarter time. I think he was on like 37. But I don't expect anyone from the Dogs to go to him in this game. Obviously, Matt Kennedy could do some sort of role there. But like if you look at the matchups, right, and if I was to do like a sort of just who's just outside the top 10, I think Bont would be like number 11. And I'll sort of talk about Bont and Dawson in the same thing. So you look at the inside matchup for mids against Adelaide is minus 7.1 over the last 5 weeks. And for the Dogs, it's essentially par, right? Minus 0.7. So pretty much bang on average. And if you go last 10 weeks for the Crows and that, so Crows are minus 6.7 for inside mids. Dogs is minus 5.6. So but not a good matchup for either. But I think that this is a matchup where both teams under the roof at Marvel will actually score a lot of fantasy points. I could see this being a really high-scoring fantasy game. So I'm not really looking too much at the matchups per se because I just think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that's going to mean more fantasy points. And I think that Bont and Dawson are probably going to both benefit a bit from that. I actually think both could go head-to-head with one another actually in this game. So I think both could score quite well here. And I've got Dawson rounding out the top 10. And it's probably more of the fact that I don't actually love a lot of the other popular matchups this week and a lot of the other options that people are looking at. So we'll go through these now and sort of have a look at here. So Errol Gordon is probably one that's missing on the list that you're probably thinking, why is he not on the list? I just think Windhager's going to go to him this week. Windhager's been playing a bit more on the wing the last couple of weeks, had 0 CBAs against Freo, then had 8 CBAs against Hawthorn last week. I just think that Errol coming back with the impact that he's made to their team since coming back, you can see the difference. I think that St Kilda are going to realise that and they're going to go to Errol. Obviously, if they don't go to Errol, I think he could go quite well. But the other thing as well is that St Kilda haven't been a good matchup for inside mids, but obviously this is more of an outside mid matchup, which St Kilda have been a good matchup last 5 weeks, plus 11.4. So that's obviously good news for Errol. And even the last 10 weeks have still been a positive matchup, plus 4.3 points for outside mids. So I think if Errol doesn't get the tag, it's probably a mistake leaving out of my top 10. Probably wouldn't make my top 5 though, but if he gets the tag, that's the reason I don't have him on the list, just because I do think he will get the tag. Nasai Wanganui-Miller, another popular player that I haven't included in my top 10. And if you look at Sydney, a lot tougher to score against. Last 5 weeks, they're still giving up some points to rebounding defenders, but it's not as easy as what it was earlier in the season. And I think you can pretty much lock in that Braden Campbell will go to him. And if it's not Braden Campbell, it'll be James Jordan, which I wouldn't be shocked if it's Jordan, who could play as like a defensive forward, and maybe Campbell goes to Jack Sinclair and they sort of try and shut both down. Nasai will be getting a tag at some point, which means that I just don't think we're looking at him as a captain option this week, right? So for me, he's not in the top 10, but is that to say that Nasai's not going to turn up? No, not saying that. I just don't think he's going to get the ceiling score against Sydney this week. But in saying that, his form is ridiculous. He's obviously averaging well over 120 in his last 5. In his last 6, 134, 117, 128, 125, 109, 145. So absolutely getting it done. And could get it done again. I just think with the tough matchup, doesn't matter. Top 10. Obviously mentioned Bont as well. I think Bont will score well this week, regardless of it being a tough matchup, and I think Dawson will do the same. Big game as well. Both captains will stand up. I think they'll both score well. Matt Scorn, obviously him and Tristan Cherry not touching either this week. Tough matchup for both. Last time they played each other, I believe, was quite a low scoring game for both of them. So I'll just grab up the scores for both of them. I believe that they played in round 2. And Tris Cherry scored okay with a 90, but Max Gawn had his lowest score of the year with a 63. And that was obviously where Gawn wasn't in very good form. So I expect Gawn to score better, and I do expect Tris Cherry to go okay as well. But obviously the ceiling's just capped because of the matchup. So not looking at either as a captain this week. Harry Sheasel, a good matchup against Melbourne here, sort of regardless of role, and LDU obviously missed this game along with George Wardlaw, so you'd think that he'll have some CBAs in this game, but yeah, just the role is the thing that I'm not looking at him as a captain this week. So his last 3, 116, 63, and 93, so not great scores there. He was getting it done before that, and I think he can still go well, right, but just doesn't have that ceiling at the moment, so I'm not looking at him as a captain option this week. Dane Zorko against Carlton. Carlton are a tough matchup for defenders, even while they're actually a bit better over the last 5 weeks, to be fair. They're plus 7.1. They're actually one of the better matchups, to be fair, for defenders over the last few weeks. What about last 10? They're actually still a decent matchup. I didn't just realize they're still a good matchup. I'm probably not putting him in there, probably just because he hasn't really got it. What's his scores been like? Over the last few weeks. So 79 last week against Port, 124, 114, 87, and 90. So some good scores there. You could put the VC on him, probably one that's probably unlucky to miss the top 10. Could have probably snuck in to the back end of the top 10, but I've currently still got him out. I still look at Carlton. I know they've been giving up points, right, but I still look at them as a tougher matchup. But for defenders particularly. So I guess we'll see. But Zorko, not a bad VC if you want to go for a high ceiling play. I just think there are better options this week. Tom Green was someone that just missed out on the list as well. So Geelong are an okay matchup for midfielders, but obviously had a good score against them earlier this year with a 133. Went 91, 108, 98 before that as well. But yeah, the big score against them, that was his highest score of the season. So good. If you can repeat that, that'd be good. Probably doesn't quite make top 10. Doesn't have that consistent ceiling that some of the other options do. Andrew Brayshaw, left him out of the list. Obviously, Hawthorn aren't a good matchup for mids, and he's been a bit quiet last few weeks as well. So just the 85 last week against Sydney, 99, 104 before that, then went 136, 113, 88, 103, 119, 78. So been a little bit up and down. That 136 against North is good. Good score against Gold Coast, but they're the only two really good scores, and they're obviously great matchups for inside mids. But outside of that, had a trickier run, but still not getting it done at the same time. So Just doesn't make my top 10 this week, probably based on form and matchup. Max Holmes doesn't make top 10. I think that if Bedford doesn't go to Smith, it could be to Holmes. But if he doesn't go to Holmes could get it done as well. Holmes scored a 116 against Giants, I believe it was, earlier this year. So obviously he can score well against them. 118, sorry, not 116. So he could score well again. Just the matchup, I just don't love that there. Even though Giants over the last 5 weeks are giving up more points for midfielders there, but I still don't really love the matchup there. Nank, if you've got him in drafts, good option against Essendon. Dunkley obviously not touching at the moment with captains, regardless of whatever matchup he's got, and that's pretty much it from here. The one that I didn't see on the list was Ollie Whitfield. I don't actually hate him as an option this week against Geelong. He's got a huge ceiling. He's gone 103, 90, 102, 93, 113 in his last 5 against Geelong. Didn't make my top 10, but someone probably just missed out. And also, probably the other one I want to touch on was Ryan Marshall. Tough matchup against Brady Grundy, but I still think he could be an option if you don't have maybe a couple of the guys up at the top. So his form has been great since the bye. 129, 105, 119, 140. Just getting it done. I just don't love the Brady Grundy matchups. That's probably why I'm steering clear of him this week. Same with an English. I'm not going near him with the tough matchup against Riley O'Brien. So that's my top 10 for round 18. My plans this week. So at the moment, I've got the VC on Nick Dayos, and I'm currently bringing in Zack Merritt. So I've currently got the captaincy on Zack Merritt. If I wasn't to bring in Merritt, I've got Nick Martin as my captain anyway. So I'm sorted in that game. I'll have one of Merritt or Martin captain, but if Dayos gets it done regardless, it's not going to matter. So, but at the moment, VC on Dayos, captain on Merritt, but it could also be captain on Nick Martin as well. I've also got Connor Rosie there as an option playing on the Sunday if I want to go there, but it will be probably on Martin if I don't bring in Merritt. So that is my plans for this week. So let me know in the comments below, guys, who you guys are going with your captain and vice captain for round 18. And yeah, hopefully you guys can smash out a big score, both with your captains and your fantasy teams in round 18. I'll be live later on tonight for another watch long, as always, for the Carlton and Brisbane game. So should be good fun there. Not huge fantasy relevant game tonight, but still we're doing a watch long. So if you've got any questions, you want to just tune in and watch the game together. Hopefully, if I'm still holding Sam Doherty, not trading him out, hopefully he puts up a good score. And that's pretty much it from what I'll be having tonight. I think I've got Moyer as well. That feels to pop 100, then I'd take his score, but that's about it. So, but yeah, that's all that's going to do us for the captains. But if you'd like to join our Patreon and get guaranteed answers to your AFL fantasy questions, if that's captains or trades, or if you want a full-on team review, you can head to our Patreon, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. Patrons get a team review every single week, and if you do want some team reviews to finish out the year, and it just helps spice a little bit extra as well at the AFL Fantasy Fanatics, you can join up. Link is in the description of the video, but make sure you guys smash a big old thumbs up on the video. That would be very much appreciated. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We're trying to reach 5k subscribers. Probably not going to do that this year, but obviously that is our next big goal. So if you can just help contribute to hitting that goal, that would be very, very much appreciated. But I'll catch Heapy Legends tonight in the watch long. If not, catch you guys tomorrow for a pre-lockout chat. Same time as always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. per time, answering all of your AFL fantasy questions as we build up to Gold Coast and Collingwood for Friday night footy. So thanks everyone. Good luck tonight, and we'll chat to you guys in the next one. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the footy. See ya.